Hello and God bless you. This is Bishop Canyon. I have just this utmost honor to be here with my Aunt Ada Lee. Aunt Ada is 93 years old. 93 years old. And I wanted to talk to her and just interview her because of all of the history that you have inside of you and the things that you have lived through. And basically what I'd like for you to do, Aunt Ada, is to talk to us about what it was like growing up as a child on a plantation. Because you were born on the plantation?
Born on the Marshall Plantation.
So you were born on a Marshall Plantation.
March 26, 1924.
Okay, now, could you talk to us a little bit about what it was like on the plantation?
Well, the plantation, we had a little house sitting out on a farm. Mm-hmm. My daddy was a farmer. And back in the day, you had to go up to the White House to get your water. Mm-hmm. And there, you had to go to the back door. You couldn't go in the front. You had to go in the back door of the plantation owner. And the man that we lived on this plantation, he was a man that ran around a lot. And he left his family there. And at that
what
time...
was his name?
Marshall.
Marshall Plantation.
Philip Marshall.
Philip Marshall.
Philip
okay.
Marshall Plantation. And my daddy, back in the day, he was the overseer. You know, they call him supervisors now. Mm-hmm. But back in the day, they called the man an overseer. Mm-hmm. He overseed the farm for the white man. And back in the day, we had to walk from the back side of the base. You know where the base is?
Robbins Air Force
Robbins Air Force Base, but it was a plantation then.
Okay.
A big plantation. And we would walk from the back side of the base all the way to Santa Ron, which is about 4 miles. Ooh, yeah. They didn't give us a school, and the Methodists, we wouldn't have had the education we had if it hadn't been for the Methodists. Mm-hmm. We went to school in the church, and it was cold then. It's not cold like it when you be so cold when you get to school, and you would have to go get the wood to start the heater to get warm. And my daddy had to buy books back then. He didn't give you books.
So you had to buy your books.
One family would buy the reader. The other family, Mr. Henry Wright, would buy the history. Hmm. And my daddy would buy the arithmetic. Hmm. And they would give us teachers who didn't have no education. They didn't have no education. They changed the law. Way back in the day, you couldn't teach school unless you had a college degree. And they taught us to read, write, and arithmetic. That's all because they didn't have no education themselves. Mm-hmm. They didn't think enough of black people to bid us to school. We had to go in the church. Mm-hmm. And during the weekdays, they said we're going to have meetings Sunday. The teacher would have us to sweep the yard and clean the church because they was going to have service that Sunday. Now you ask questions what you want me to do.
Okay, now on the plantation, now you say granddaddy, they would get, do the farming and get the crops, and they would take them to to Marshall, and he would let granddaddy keep some of it?
She would, on half, you call sharecropping. Mm-hmm. Sharecropping. And whatever the man owned the land. Mm-hmm. My daddy just was sharecropping. Mm-hmm. And he would give him half of what he made on the thing. See, my daddy worked on the railroad in the wintertime. Okay. And farmed in the spring. That's how we got it. And when we picked the cotton, and that's how we would get money to carry on. And we had hogs, mm-hmm. cows, mm-hmm. and everything. And when you kill them hogs, it's enough to last you a long time.
Right, mm-hmm. right. So earlier when you were talking to me, you were making mention of the fact that there was a lynching.
Yeah.
Could you talk to us about that?
Yeah. Now, Seal, a friend of mine, she passed. She was the same age as your mama, and her sister was the same age as me. And she was up there getting the water when the man went in and tried to rape the Watson lady, and it was a white man, and he had his face painted black in his hand, but she could see up there where they didn't get all of it. It was a white man, and she was getting the water when the man ran out the house. The white man, he was a pope. You know, back in the day, white folks didn't recognize poor white folks like they didn't recognize us.
Okay, so they treated poor white folk just like they treated black folk.
Amen.
Okay.
And so this was a white man who ran out, tried to rape the Miss Watson. And Sil was there getting the water. And they took her in the car. And you know, a Baby Ruth candy was some kind of candy back in the day.
That was a real treat.
That was Baby Ruth was something else. And they got her in the car because she was there, saw the man when he ran out there. Give her all kind of candies. Was that your daddy? She said, no. Was it a black man? No. I love her in the grave because all that what they were riding off in her, she didn't change.
So they were trying to get her to say that it was a black man.
Right. And so they did get her daddy in the car and was going down there to lynching. And you know, back in the day, the Ford car, it didn't run fast. You could outrun the Ford car back in the day. He jumped out the car and got away. So they just wanted an end to be
a black man.
Yes, sir. And they got this man who hadn't been in Western, it was Western then, long. Got him in the car and was carrying the lynching. And Mama was up to the white
You said it was two cars, right?
No, one car.
One car, okay.
And we was in the yard playing. And they come by our house with the black man in there. And see, we was colored then. And when Mama came, we said, Mama, the white folk come by here with a colored man in the car. We was colored then. We done beat everything but a child of God. Had him in the car. And we said, Mama, they come, and we didn't know it was Mr. Lee Green. That was his name.
Okay.
All we know it was a colored man, but we couldn't tell you. We told Mama who it was. You know, Mama was a very courageous woman. She had Indian in her. Didn't any of us take after her. Not one took colors after Mama. So she said, well, I'm going down here where they lynching him. And went on down there and she said, Annie, you can go back home. It ain't none of Louis.
So they told Grandmama she
you
can go back home
because
it wasn't Granddaddy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mama went down there to see if it was Daddy car. All we could see was a colored man in the car. And when she went down there, said, Annie, go back home. It ain't none of Louis. And she went back home and they hung that man. And that tree that they hung him on, it wouldn't die. It stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. And when they built up Jody Town, that's when they cut the tree down. And they said, uncut Lee Green's tree down. That was the man. He was a newcomer in here.
So he wasn't even down there long.
Huh?
He hadn't even moved here long.
No, he was a newcomer in here. And it always been some good white folks back in the day. They got dad and put him up in the law of the house to keep from getting him, cause all they wanted was a nigger.
So they put Granddaddy in the law just to hide him, protect him,
keep him from getting lynched. And my friend's daddy, Mr. Henry Wright, they was gonna lynch him, but he jumped out the car and got away. And then they got Lee Green cause he didn't have no family. He was a new man working in the swamp.
Now you said that There was some good. There are a lot of good white people,
Yeah.
and some evil white people. Like there are good blacks and evil black.
Right.
But there are some good white people that that helped Granddaddy, and I know you saw the goodness of certain white people as you were coming up.
Right.
But what a lot of people don't know is you have been extremely instrumental in the civil rights movement here in Warner Robins. What was it that motivated you to get involved in civil rights?
I just always wanted better than what I had.
Wow.
And I didn't try to keep my children back from being involved. And I remember when they locked up to 17 children.
Hey guys.
Locked up 17 children?
17 children.
Was that here in
And
Warner Robins?
right here.
Now, what did they lock them up for?
They had a Rexall drugstore. You could go in there, the whites could go in there, and you know they had bars in the drugstore back there. You can go in there and eat. And so the Oscar Tommy and Sammy Smith, unknowing to us, got all them 17. I was at Poor Street working, and the news came and said they locking up him up in Dale had and slipped out. Him and Ann, Pete and Alton, 17 children, and they said Darren went in there to eat, and they said we don't serve you in here. And instead of Darren obeying the man going out, he put it. You know they had piccolos in the thing then.
Piccolos.
Yeah, he put some money in there.
Now, what's a piccolo?
Put the money in there.
Oh, it's a jukebox.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
what you call them piccolos back in the day.
You call Piccolo.
They asked him, say, go out of here. Instead of you going out, he put a money in there and he said, I'm clean and I'm just as good as those peoples over there. And I'm not going out. And 5 went in there and they wouldn't go out. Alton went in and they wouldn't go out. Pete went in till they got 17. Children wouldn't go out trying to eat in the Rexall drugstore. And so when they said they lock them up, I was at Pearl Stephen working. I throwed on my apron and got in the car and went up there where they was locking them up. And them children was singing, I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up the Freedom Way. And they kept on and they saw they wasn't gonna stop. They closed the restaurant down and put all them children in the car, carried them to Perry, and put them in jail. And I said, Lord, in Perry, the meanest place you ever want to be in. And because it mixed up, white men got black children there, and you ever seen a town like that, it's mean. And I said, Lord, and they just had beat up a man in a truck coming through Perry, beat him up. And it sued Perry, because that company come and sued Perry. But to put them 17 children, locked them up in Perry. I was all right long as they kept them in Warner Robins, but they kept them in Perry, and I know they was going to
Bad reputation in Perry.
And so we set up at Springfield Baptist Church all night, and Oscar Tommy called Robert Kennedy. He was the
Attorney General.
Attorney General. And he called Perry and told her Perry, it better not have on them children's head be burnt.
Now, Robert Kennedy did this.
Robert Kennedy, bless them Kennedy's heart today. And President Johnson, bless him, because we wasn't allowed to vote. Yeah.
Right.
You could not, and that's how come I get extra mad when they said, I ain't gonna vote, it ain't gonna help me no how. I don't like people to tell me that I blesses them out. and we
All
had
that you done went through, wasn't it? That's right.
we had Silas had them old folks me teaching them how to. He got a grant teaching them how to pass that test what they had.
Okay.
You had to pass a literacy test to get a chance to vote back then.
Pass a literacy test
Literacy
just
test.
to be able to vote.
And we got a grant.
So
and-
basically, they made it as hard as they could for you to vote,
Right.
trying to
They-
keep you from
right,
voting because
right.
they knew most black people were illiterate. They
That's
couldn't
right.
read.
That's right. And Silas got a grant, and I was teaching them how to read that thing, and they could read it verbatim. I got Mama and this preacher and all them old folks carried them to the courthouse to vote. And when she got through aggravating them folks, they done forgot everything I told them. And I left there crying.
Sorry.
They forgot everything I had told them. And I left there crying because they couldn't pass it.
Right.
They done scared them so bad, they done forgot all that I told them. So I brought them back.
It's not funny, but the way you tell it sometimes.
And President Johnson, bless him, in the graveyard, he made it possible you could just make an X and get changed to vote. And I got all them folks and cried it out the thing. Because they could vote, because if they couldn't read, you could make an X and still be able to vote. Mm-hmm. And that was in the 60s when we were allowed to vote here. In the 60s.
So that is what started you being active in the civil rights
Actually
movement.
in the civil rights movement.
Wow,
And I want to tell you this. By me stepping out there and my children going, and this man, Donald Holloway from Atlanta, you remember him?
Mm-hmm.
He died a few years ago because I had all the history of him. When I'm 17, he came down to plead their case. They were 17 for it had been locked up. I was the only parent with Oscar, Tommy, and Silas. I said, I'm going with my children. And this lady, we all met up in Jodytown. And she said, Ada said, take care of my son. Said he just got out the hospital, Frank Jones. Just got out the hospital and he had to take this medicine at a certain time. But he was one of the 17 who was locked up. Mm-hmm. I said, I do my best to take care of him. We went on the pier and Don Holloway was up pleading the case for these children, trying to get that right. So Frank went out the door to take his medicine. He went to the black water. The black water was hot. And the white water was so cold it was spewing up. Mm-hmm. That was when they had black and white.
So the
now it had color.
Color. So the colored water was not refrigerated.
It was black.
It was just hot.
And Frank always was an outgoing person. He went over there and got some of the white water. Mm-hmm. And they had a man in Perry called Dick Rowley. That's who to call it beat up black folks. He done beat up everybody, and he met his match one day and beat this black man. And the man tore him up and he had to leave Perry. But he come back, he had to leave Perry because he tore that man behind up. And he came back.
So the beater got beat.
Now, I ain't finished telling you about Duck Wright. They sent him to this.
Okay.
And Frank got the water and he called Duck Wright to come beat him up. So the jailer said, trouble out here. And everybody jumped up to go out. And the judge, old low-down judge, said, sit down, everybody. And everybody sat down, but you know who? Me. I said, Frank got there, and that lady told me to take care of her son. I didn't sit down, and everybody else sit down. I went out there, and Doc Roth hadn't got him and Frank. You know, Frank was little, and he was so fight. And I had a black pen in the pocketbook. I joined Frank. Lord, I'd be some white man behind that day. We fight it, and then his cousin, she came up, and she have a lot of geeks in her. She joined in and went to fighting too. Mm-hmm. And so they got her, Lord been good to me. They got her by her heel and drug her all the way from the courthouse to the jail and locked her up. And then
they drug her.
And then laying a finger on me.
Mm.
And I tell you what, I never have had nobody call me and bless me out or did anything to me. I just been blessed. Mm-hmm. Out of all I've been through with. Cause I was that help beating that white man, and I didn't know it was beating Dr. Rodden. I didn't know who it was in a
You just beating somebody.
I didn't know it was him, and I done heard how he beat folks up. And this lady said, Dak Rodden always starts something. I said, who? I said, that was him for this beat. And we went on by the school now. And the school let all us come in there and eat, and we paid for it. And the principal at that school, they fired him for letting us eat there.
Mm.
But Donaldwell cleared all of those 17 children. They had a big to do for them 17 who made it possible for us not long ago. 17 children.
Well, I want to ask you something. You were saying that back in the day, like Granddaddy bought the arithmetic book, another family brought the history book, another one the English book. But they were determined that their children would get an education. You briefly hit on it, but how does it make you feel when you see black children who do not value education, where they don't do their best in school? How does it make you feel when you see our kids?
It's just terrible. Out of all this education, if I had a chance to go on to college like they got, I would have gone and now these children that's thrown away their life. And what makes it so bad, we killing each other. You don't hear tell them killing the white folks every week in Macon. One kill a black one every week. Not one every week, and it's coming on out here. They coming out here bothering us now. It's just awful the way we going. It makes tears come to my eyes. How black people throwing away their life.
If there was a young person in this room, I want you to look at that camera right there, and I want you to there's a young person on the end of that camera, and I want you to tell that young person why they should value education and why they should go to school and be the best they should be. I want you to convince them to go to school. They can become doctors. They can become lawyers. So talk to that young man.
I would like to say to you, get yourself an education. Education is the key to what you want to be. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, of anything you want to be, but education is the best polish that you can possibly get.
Amen. Now this is from a 93-year-old black woman who loved to go to school, would have loved to have had the opportunity to go to college and learn and be all that she could be. And even though you didn't go to college, you've made such a tremendous impact in the lives of so many people. Let me tell you something. My aunt is somebody. When politicians run for office in Warner Robins, they come by Ada Lee's house and talk to Ada Lee, because Ada Lee got clout. You hear me? Ada Lee got juice. They have a park that they have named after my aunt, and they're remodeling it now because that is how well she is thought of. You also talked about the number of blacks that have talked to you and said they were not going to vote. Again, how does that make you feel, and why does it make you feel that way?
Oh, because people have lost their lives trying to get to vote. You know, when we was over in Selma, Alabama, Miss Luzo, the white lady, all came down to help the people in the South. They didn't have to do it. And she was in the line marching with the black people's freedom.
Just a white lady.
And they killed her.
There's a white lady.
Yeah, killed Miss Luzo.
So there were a lot of white people
that
contributed to the advancement of black people.
Yeah, and I got the people who was coming from up north to help us march all the way. In Jackson, Georgia was a mean place. And I got the history of them, how they treated them white. Coming down here helping, and I asked one of the white, they stayed in our house. stayed in Lilliput's house to help us
These
integrate this
the
school.
white people.
Yeah, white
Stayed
students.
in your
Student.
students stayed in your house.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they said, we want to eat soul food. I heard them talking about soul food. I fixed string beans and neck bones, and they just enjoyed with us. And Lilliput had more stayed in her house than I had in my house. They stayed in the hospital, and I asked one of the white girls one day, I said, why are you all risking your life to come and help us? She said, our parents told us black people was ignorant, and it smelled bad, and they didn't have no kind of knowledge at all. And said, when we got to college up north, when we got to college, we found that blacks were just as intelligent as we was, and they were rebelling against their parents for telling a lie.
Mm.
And they, a whole lot of them came down, and one day we was walking, me and a white girl was picking in this mall cause they wouldn't hire any of us. Nothing but to clean up behind them. We couldn't have no job working in those stores like what you got now. Black people that have a big opportunity and don't have sense enough to stay in school and try to accomplish it. We was walking with this white girl up Watson Boulevard. Easter, we was telling them, wear old clothes with new dignity. Cause they wouldn't hire them go in the store buying this stuff.
Mhm.
And we was in
Old clothes with new dignity.
Oh,
Oh,
that
that's
was our
powerful.
motto.
Yes.
And I had the sign on it, and they didn't taught us to don't never disgrace the sign. If you gonna get upset, take off the sign and fight. Don't they
Don't
didn't
fight
buy-
with the sign on.
Route,
Mhm.
peaceful, non-violent. And we was walking up Watson Boulevard, and a truck came by and threw the rock and hit that girl on the leg, and it started bleeding. The white girl
Mhm.
out trying to help us.
Wow. Well, there's so much. You talked when we first came in. You talked about Juneteenth Day
Yeah.
and when the slaves were set free. Could you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, June the 10th is the oldest celebration. The date was back to 1865. And we didn't get to wood till 1865, but he freed us January the 1st, 1863.
Mm.
That's why we celebrate June 10th.
So you had been set free before you got the word, so you were still working like
Right,
you was a
still
slave.
working as a slave, cause it wouldn't take. In Sherman, the white people came down and burned out this place, trying to help us free. They came down from the north. They tried to help us be free. They burnt down barns and everything like that. We come from a long ways, and black done got so high and mighty they can't get along with each other, and we ought to be the best race it is from where we come from.
Why do you think it's like that, Ada?
I just don't know why. What happened?
You know what? You were talking about the white kids who had been told by their parents that blacks were ignorant, were not clean, and then when they went to school, they found out that what they had been told by their parents wasn't true, because they gave themselves an opportunity to get to know black people.
Right.
You know, I think that's the biggest problem. We take people's word for how one another is instead of getting to know people for themselves.
Right.
Because you know what, Ada, I think basically all people want the same thing out of life, but we won't get to that point where we believe that until we sit down, we break bread, and we talk, and we get to know each other, instead of believing what we have been told by people that we looked up to concerning how people actually, their perception of how black people were. Now, is there anything else on your mind that you want to share?
Yeah, we had a hard time. Now they had a school for white in Bonaire, and the whites had a bus, and we was walking from our school to church, and they would throw things out the bus at us. You know, Calvin, my brother Calvin, he didn't take nothing off of white or black. So he said, I'm going to fix them this day. And you know, back in the day, you didn't have no air conditioning in no cars. And the bus's window was down. So she got some rock, a big rock, and throwed it in the bus and hit one of them children. The bus man stopped, and it was a crowd of us children walking to school. Walking to school. She said, who threw that rock? Nobody didn't say a word. Who threw that rock? Nobody didn't say a word. Karen said, if he come out here, we all gonna jump on him and tear him up. So Kevin didn't play with him. So that man got back in the bus, but you can be sure they stopped throwing us out at that bus at us.
Does anybody here?
And now everybody in Warner Robin, I've never been harassed about the work I've done. And I have got many people a job. Now, Sonny Watson, I want to show his picture. His aunt, the first mayor of this city of Warner Robin, he came to my daddy because his daughter married young in college. And she didn't know anything. And he asked my daddy, said, would you let Ada go and stay with my daughter to help her with this baby? She had a baby. Daddy said, if you take care of her, and he said, I'll pay her. So I went and stayed in the house with the first mayor's daughter to help her out. The man now is a big man here. Sonny Watson, he's over the hospital. And I had a niece who had volunteered at this hospital and they were never hired out of volunteers. So I went to this man who I stayed in the house with them, and he said she will get a job. And all he had to do is call that hospital, and that girl worked there, and he would call and check to see how she was doing. And she's doing real good at that hospital. The woman graduated from Fort Valley State, and I told him Warren needed a job. He sent Warren over here, so Warren working at Georgia Tech from my work, what I had done, and what I had asked, and I have got many people a job here by being who I was. And my nephew, one of Calvin boys, was driving this three-wheel thing, and you're supposed to have a license for it. And they caught him way out there because he owned all that place back out there. And the police said, was you the one driving that thing? He said, no. He done went to the house real fast and got rid of the thing. And so she asked his wife, and she dropped her head. And he said, yeah, that was me. So he went down here in Cullen Tarleton place, and he said, you look like one of those Jackson boys. He said, yeah. I said, do you know Ada Lee? She said, yeah. I said, that's my friend. And he tore up the ticket because of me. And I got people of many jobs because who I am. Gary down at the city hall, and I told him, I said, Gary here from New York, Detroit, and have 2 children. I said, he need a job, and that mayor created a job for Gary, and he working at City Hall now.
Wow, now that's not...
and they remodeling the park they hadn't finished, and we're going to have a big dedication, the mayor said. And when I was crying, Miss Senior of Warner Robin, 2 ladies tried to sue the city because I was the only black in it, and they tried to sue the city, said the judges know me, and I didn't know them judges because 2 of us white and 1 was black. And they tried to sue the city. And this mayor said, well, as long as I'm the mayor, she will be the Miss Senior, so they stopped having this senior program because of that.
My Lord. Well, I tell you, Anita, it's been just such a pleasure, a privilege. It's so educational. I know when my mother was alive, your sister, we would sit down and she would talk to me about many of the things that you talked about. But for whatever reason, I just didn't record her. And it was in my heart, my spirit. I said, I got to get down here to get this history that's tied up in my heart.
Well, I got it somewhere in there. When one of us was 50 years old, they came and got me and Catmull into the First Baptist Church and got all of this. And it's supposed to be at the library. My whole entire life.
Wow.
But they always put it in there. They put it in there about that lynching.
Oh, they didn't put that part in there.
That part, all this good stuff what I had done, they put all that in there. But they didn't put about lynching Lee Green. Now this is the last thing they wrote for me, a juror of the community. So I had it somewhere and they put this plastic over it. And all that is about that was done recently.
Wow.
A juror.
A jewel of the community. And you know what? You are a jewel. Not only in the community, but in our family as well.
Yeah.
You know. Does anybody here, do you have a question?
I have a question. Mother said Miss Laura Garman was a good teacher for her. That was that y'all's teacher?
She was a good teacher, but she didn't know nothing about no geometry and algebra and all that stuff.
She did the best she could.
She
Mama
did,
said
and
she
she
learned so
taught
much
us
from her.
how to be a lady.
Uh-huh.
And my brother came home, my oldest brother. He came home and I had walked all the way to St. Laurent by myself because Anna Laura never didn't go that day. And he said, where Ada? Mama said she went to school today. And he got in the car. He was still visiting. He had moved to Atlanta. And he picked me up and he said, I'm going to ask my daddy to let you go to Atlanta and go to school. So when Miss Susan Crab made me a whole lot of dressing, tie in the back, up here, she could really sew. And when I got to Atlanta, them girls had on shoes with the dime in it, sweaters and all that stuff. And this man would had me to stay with his daughter. They paid me and I bought all my clothes and I could go back to school with Sloppy Joes and other shoes. And I went to Atlanta and I graduated from David T. Howard. Miss Basilina Usher, they got a school up there named after her.
Now you stayed with Mom and Daddy for a while.
And my brother. All of us stayed in a house together by 2 rooms. Maddie and Candy and me and Leah, we all stayed together. And then I graduated from David T. Howard and went on to Washington High every summer. And I would bring Junior home with me, you know, every summer.
Well, praise the Lord. Ada, thank you so much. Yes.
You go. Anita, I want you to talk to women about how powerful women are and their role in the community and the family.
Now, what now?
I want you to just talk to women about how powerful women are and that we don't have to not be a part or to do our part because we're women, because women are strong. What would you say to women nowadays?
Women, if a good woman, you can't beat a good woman, she's a jewel. And she needs to stand up and be what she's supposed to be. A good woman will take care of her children, dress like she should dress, and just be a woman. Cause a good man is hard to find, cause more men in prison than it is in college.
That's true.
Yes, ma'am.
And a good woman is hard to find, and she don't have to be anything but a good woman. Cause a good woman is somebody.
Yes, ma'am. What about women going to school and being educated and all that good
They
stuff?
need to stay in school and be educated and try to teach the children the right thing, because education is the key. You can be anything you want to be. You don't have to drag around here. You can be anything you want to be, but most of all, thank God and look to Him and get an education.
Yes, ma'am.
You had a question, Bernice?
I was just gonna make this comment, Aunt Ada. You say you went to David T. Howard High School.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm proud to say I finished David T. Howard High School,
You did.
and it's still there. And every year we have a picnic at the back of the David T. Howard. It is still there, David T. Howard High School. I finished in 1958, and Junior, he finished in 1956. And another thing I want to ask you about the man that they lynched. Did they ever find out who really
Raped the.
raped the lady?
They didn't want to find out who raped him, because they said they had bloodhound dogs. And every time the dog would go, he'd go to that man's house.